So, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 7, or as it's known on the street, episode 6, part 2. I am your co-host, Dan.
And I'm Ron.
And this is a nominee, the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. We set ourselves apart in a large market.
Watching movies that we generally don't expect others to see.
Yeah, we watch a lot of what I kind of call lost episodes.
Yeah, lots of lost episodes of lots of things. Oh, that's not entirely fair. We watch stuff that we want to see.
Yeah, it's kind of like whatever we decide we want to watch that week. With Ron is like very patient. Sometimes I just get like in a heavy mood to like watch something in particular, and it's not necessarily always like taking out candy. You know, sometimes it's like liver and onions kind of stuff. And Ron has been a trooper about eating half of all the liver and onions.
It was more like giving me onions. So it was just onions. And I like onions. Can't stand liver, but I like onions. But can't have too many onions. You might eat like an entire bowl full of onions.
And there's a natural check on that because we're talking pretty close to each other for this entire podcast. So if I give Ron too many onions, what goes around comes around. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I'll just be breathing out onions all over the apartment. Breathing it at the dog. There's a pod dog today.
There's a pod dog, just today only.
We haven't seen the podcat in a while.
Podcat's hanging out on the back porch, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Because she's just kind of like, I don't want to deal with the pod dog. I know that the pod dog is a passing phase. So we're continuing our discussion this episode that we began last episode. We watched 5 very short films by Bruce Conner. I think the shortest things that we have watched for our show so far that weren't entitled The Super Friends, something.
Speaking of.
We did watch The Super Friends is actually the longest thing we watched this week. Because we watched a full-length episode of the original Challenge of the Super Friends with the Legion of Doom and the Swamp Lair, and slightly progressive but also very problematic, ethnically based superpowers. We have Apache Chief, and who's the samurai guy that just kind of looks like...
Wasn't he just called Samurai? He turns into
he's just called Samurai, right? Because you don't need a second name, because you don't need to distinguish that in the West.
Right.
I guess.
So Apache Chief's power is that...
He gets big.
Yeah.
When he says, I'm getting big, at least according to this episode.
And the samurai becomes a typhoon. Or a little mini cyclone. And yeah, I just checked, his name is just Samurai.
Yeah, so we have those, and we have Superman, who is technically an alien.
That's true.
You know, the whitest alien you'll ever see outside the miniseries V. But an alien nonetheless.
So you've seen V?
I watched the first 2 hours, and then I have not gotten around to finishing it yet. So
I saw it a few years ago. It was actually showing on the Sci-Fi Channel or one of those. And it doesn't age that well, but it still deals with some contemporary issues.
Well, I felt like one of its strengths, which was probably one of its weaknesses for a really long time, was how direct it was. Like, kind of how it looks stupid in a weird way, because it's very clear. The guy who produced it read It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, decided, I'm going to make this almost word for word with aliens, and I'm going to sell it to a big network, and he did, and it was very successful, and good for him. And I feel like, given our current situation, to the extent that I think the memory of the Nazis and fascism has downplayed, like, the genocide aspect of it correctly has been played up, or not played up in the sense like it's emphasized more than the other components of a fascist uprising, but the kind of disinformation makes the directness of the V miniseries kind of refreshing, just because so much of dealing with actual fascists as we're dealing with right now in the United States, I know some of our listeners are in Slovakia, but half of dealing with it is having the people say, you know, to America with a straight face, we are not fascists. They just hate the visitors, as they call them in V. In our case, it's, you know, Google is somehow biased against the conservatives when I can go onto YouTube and all I look up is videos of guys taking apart video game consoles, and somehow it's still recommending Jordan Peterson to me. So I don't think the conservative quote-unquote quote-unquote anti-conservative bias is a bunch of bullshit.
I keep getting ads on Facebook for Donald Trump. Very prominent ads.
Right, and you're like not really the demographic.
Yeah,
all, like in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. In fact, recently, after Trump made those racist statements, the overtly racist statements in that tweet,
the ones that got more attention,
the ones
than the other ones
that actually had the House resolution against them. So after that, I actually liked AOC on Facebook. I actually intentionally don't do too many likes for political stuff, but yeah, so I liked AOC. Still getting all those Trump ads and requests for money. So Facebook actually has some way of identifying what my politics are. And
they're still sending you the stuff because clearly, like, either they're paying a lot to get promoted in the algorithm, or they're just so completely gaming the algorithm that it's pointless to.
Yeah, so that bias is certainly not true for Facebook.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, Facebook, I think they're realizing that their government protection now, not to get too far off track into politics, because, like, I try to do this podcast as, like, a slight respite from obsessively reading newspapers all week, usually. But, yeah, like, Facebook is realizing if they want to keep these sweetheart government protections that don't make any sense, they got to cozy up to whoever the most, like, craven person who's going to recognize their ability as a propaganda and surveillance system that can be privately hired out. So I would not be that surprised if the big higher-ups in Facebook are essentially Russian disinformation campaign / global fascist uprising. Because you have to realize that Mark Zuckerberg may be Jewish, but he identifies first and foremost as a member of the 1%. That's like why I think a lot of this stuff that these guys do is so confusing, is because like we're thinking of identity politics as like, oh, I'm a Jewish guy, I'm a millennial, I'm blah, blah, blah. And, like if I was extremely wealthy, that would probably be my predominant self-identifying thing, right? Because it just would dominate so many parts of your life if you didn't go into it very specifically thinking, I'm going to be a rich person, and I know what it looks like to not be a very rich person.
But do you think, is that the overt main way of identifying? So say, I am a rich person. I'm also, well, let's say, Jewish, liberal, queer, whatever else. So these are things that are me, except for the rich person part. But when I make my millions, do you think then I'll be saying, okay, I'm a rich person, and that second, Jewish, liberal, queer?
Probably like most of the people you're socializing with regularly would be either people that are around you in some capacity because you hired them to do something. So you're never going to get like a straight relationship, or a straight isn't the right word, but like a straightforward relationship with the person because they know that their livelihood depends on you feeling like
right. Yeah. They can't say anything that'll be too, I don't want to say offensive to you, but also not offensive isn't what I'm looking for.
You sort of lose the feedback loop that makes you realize what is and isn't acceptable behavior within society, I think.
You get more yes men or yes people.
Yeah.
Because if the people who work for you, if you don't say yes, you're at the risk of getting fired.
Right. And so like psychologically, it does kind of make sense that when these very rich people respond to like Twitter outrages, they're just sort of like, this seems like a random thing coming out of nowhere, even though it's connected to heinous behavior that they engaged in. They're not used to seeing consequences as a tangible thing in their day-to-day existence.
Speaking of Twitter, what is it? What did you say? Twitter. Speaking of
like human flesh mob, like the Twitter outrage mob that's sort of come to replace parts of the rule of law that have collapsed within the United States, at least. Like I think with Me Too, that's another thing that isn't mentioned, is that like in some senses it's a very direct response to most of the population not actually believing in the validity of the rule of law after those very public hearings about those police shootings shootings where it's like the police officer basically does everything except say on tape, like, I intend to commit first-degree murder. I am premeditating right now. Like, they pretty much, like, they walk up to that line practically, and then the judges just let them off. I think that had a huge impact on public confidence in the rule of law. And I mean, also just like personal experiences that people had, because like every Me Too story, or not every, but like hashtag not all Me Too.
Oh God, no, please, nobody use that, and please don't make us, please don't think that we have anything to do with anything remotely like that. But on that note, go ahead.
But like, every one of these, or not every one, but like a lot of the stories, there's an early part of the story where the person is like, I went to law enforcement officials, they did not take my complaint seriously, and that would make somebody like fairly doubtful of the validity of the promises made by the kind of idea of the rule of law that you're at least sold as a kid. Most people, I think, want to think is fully functional because, like, it's a very scary idea to think that it doesn't work that way, right? Anyway, so back to...
I was just going to say, so just regarding Twitter outrage, so there's somebody who started following us, and I suddenly got a tweet on my personal account that laughed because they saw in my profile that I was blocked by James Kirk. I was blocked by James Tiberius Kirk. No, himself. I was blocked by William Shatner. So I have that in my profile about a few things, including that, sort of as a point of pride in a way. Not pride so much as how it happened, but just getting blocked by William Shatner was like, okay, that's cool. Well, anyways, he asked me about it. So
the guy messaging you, not William Shatner.
No.
Like, Shatner didn't come running back crying in the middle of the night with a boombox saying, Ron, I need you on Twitter.
But can you remind me why I blocked you in the first place? So I explained to him. I told him, but I ended up writing in very detail because sometimes, well, you see here.
I can't live. If living is to block you.
Well, he does it, actually. William Shatner, in a way, it's not that big a deal because he blocks people constantly, and he blocks them at the littlest thing. If they just disagree with him, he blocks them. And he's got, right now, 2.5 million
followers.
He's
the captain of the ship. He can't let everybody mutiny.
No, he can, throw them in the brig, but then, you let them out, or you give them a court-martial before you throw them out.
No, he's throwing them out the airlock, yeah. It's like they're in the cold, harsh outer space of not having access to William Shatner's Twitter feed.
He's judge, jury, and executioner, and he takes the role of executioner very seriously, in that he really relishes it and likes to use it a lot. Anyways,
maybe a little bit of the authoritarian in T.J. Hooker was not put on.
But yeah, so I ended up writing in 14 tweets exactly what happened. I don't know. Should I go over what happened?
Yeah.
Should I describe it?
Yeah. This is juicy stuff.
Okay. So this is the story of William Shatner blocking me on Twitter. All right. In September of 2017, I posted the following tweet. Removed dead people from my Twitter feed, including @TheRealNimoy and @Carrie Fisher. For now, I'm still following @William Shatner. So it was actually pretty sad, when Carrie Fisher died and when Leonard Nimoy died. And in fact, when Carrie Fisher died, what was the movie? Not Solo. What was the first A Star Wars story? Rogue One. Mm-hmm. Rogue One was out, and I'd already seen it twice. I was at the library. I'd picked out one of Carrie Fisher's book, and I just happened to notice on Twitter something popped up, and it said, Carrie Fisher has passed away. I'm like, what? And I clicked on it, saw that she was dead, closed the book, packed up my bag, and walked to the movie theater, which was about a 5-minute walk, and went to see Rogue One again. Because, spoiler alert, not Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia appears in it briefly. And it's not actually Carrie Fisher, but that was okay, because it was still Princess Leia, and therefore Carrie Fisher.
And that thematically ties this story to Maryland Times 5.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And to find out why, you'll have to listen to the previous episode.
So anyways, it was sad. But I don't like following dead people on Twitter. I find it kind of creepy. Same thing with Facebook. In fact, I had, a few weeks ago, a message popped up that said, I won't say the name, wish so-and-so a happy birthday. And a few people actually posted on his wall. So they didn't know that he was dead. He had died over a year ago. Anyways, so especially sad about these two. So I posted about it. Now, William Shatner was... and is, let me make that clear, he is still alive, which is good. So I referenced him.
He's immortal.
He is immortal. And in fact, that's what one of the responses was. something in the 100 people or so that responded to
Yeah,
the
because
tweet.
like Bilbo Baggins is a decent novelty song, but nobody has made novelty records with the kind of staying power that William Shatner
Oh yeah,
has and still does.
What is it? Seeking Major Tom?
Oh yeah, the whole like the space themed album he came out with a couple of years ago that has his version of Bohemian Rhapsody. Like if there's one short, for some reason I always imagine there being like a short comedy clip on loop at my funeral, and I don't know where this came from, but I just always pictured it. For the longest time, I always wanted it to be that scene from the Jerry Lewis Nutty Professor where he's dancing leapfrog, and he kind of pulls his glasses down a little bit, and he's doing like this like crazy dance. But I think now it would be the William Shatner Bohemian Rhapsody music video.
So the album is called Seeking Major Tom, and it's got songs like Major Tom, Space Oddity, Rocket Man, and Bohemian Rhapsody, plus a bunch of other ones. He's not the only one singing in these, although he kind of sings.
He gets a lot of musicians who just want to be on a William Shatner record because everybody realizes, like, there's technically good records from around the time that The Transformed Man came out that I never go back to. But the William Shatner Mr. Tambourine Man, that's at least once, twice a year. I hear that. I pull it out. Yeah, and it just never gets old for me, at least, like hearing Shatner like try to talk like a person.
Well, yeah, for that, just watch all of Star Trek the original series.
Acted in, yeah.
Yeah, or anything.
And the Star Trek animated series is because they like cut his voice up a little bit, which makes it sound even stranger.
Wow.
And it's got Nimoy too. It's got like all the original.
Yeah. Just to point out, the Bilbo Baggins song is Leonard Nimoy. Did Carrie Fisher ever do a song? Oh, yeah. She sings at the end of the holiday special, the Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah.
She sings, like, what's the name of the holiday? Peace Day?
Oh, yeah, Life Day.
Life Day.
Yeah, Life Day. And that's the reason why the Wookiee's, like, jerking off beneath his desk for 10 minutes in that video. Right? Like, the desk is just shaking, and I guess he's supposed to be excited about Life Day, but they carry it on for, like, and it gets faster as it goes on. And I should also point out that Carrie Fisher claims to have been on so much coke and God knows what, she doesn't remember filming the holiday special.
Oh, I can, from the stuff she's said, I can believe it.
And like George Lucas, I think, is like very envious of that position, right? Because he's just like been running away from that for the rest of his life.
He should just, I don't know, take the bull by the horns. That's not it.
And but it's just not like there's a lot of crappy Star Wars shit. Like,
does Disney now own the rights to all like the older Star Wars stuff, or just
they own all of it?
So does that mean they own the holiday special?
In theory, yeah. The only thing I can think is that NBC might own some kind of rights to part of it. I also think that, like, George Lucas may have included a rider in the deal saying you will not commercially release the holiday. But, like, Disney, they own all the toys now. So
all Star Wars properties, all Lucasfilm.
They own all of the Simpsons. They own every Fox property that wasn't part of the news division. So they own Family Guy, they own The Simpsons, they own King of the Hill, they own every Marvel property. Like, Sony has some of the rights to Spider-Man, but for the most part, they have the entire Marvel sandbox to play in.
Okay.
Pretty much anything that isn't directly owned by Netflix or like NBC or something is probably owned by Disney right now.
Okay.
So we're going to start seeing some really strange mashup movies because the next logical step after superhero movies getting past the like every movie is an origin movie and getting to like the weird stuff that makes comics fun, like crossovers and big multi whatever thing events, so that it could just be this. You know, it's like going to a baseball game. You go in there to see balls fly by your head. The crazier, more out there it is, and the more kind of ADD, like it doesn't care about making sense, the more I like superhero stuff. That's why I've been loving going through these old Super Friends episodes.
So in Star Wars, in Episode 9, we're going to see Mickey Mouse flying the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, you're going to see, like, you know, here's the cast from Futurama meets the actual Star Trek crew. Or like,
and Galaxy Quest crew.
Yeah, if they own all three, like, people would love that.
Yeah. Oh man, Galaxy Quest and Star Trek together?
Yeah.
The show and the parody? Oh, that's like Peter Parker met Peter Porker, right? In the
Oh yeah, Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, Spider-Ham.
Wait, was Peter Parker in the...
Well, they had, like, Miles Morales, who's the second Ultimate Spider-Man after they, like, killed off all the Ultimate line characters. Why do I know all this? I haven't even read half these comics. That's the curse of Wikipedia, is that it makes it sound like I've read everything when I've really just read a lot of Wikipedia.
And you have a photographic memory, so it's all...
Right,
it's all
so
there,
it's like particularly sticky when it comes to like dry lists of things. So like I just pick up like this came after this.
So do you actually also picture the link and you clicking on that link and going to that next page?
A lot of times I'll picture, like with a print book, I'll picture the actual shape of the paragraphs on the page, and then I'll remember what the shape of the paragraph looked like when I was reading it.
Okay.
If I'm trying to find a sentence again. So I won't remember like page numbers or things like that, but it is like a very kind of blocky visual memory of the page. With websites, I'll usually remember something like that. Very frequently the picture, some kind of strange detail. My brain is kind of like wired itself around the internet, I guess, so I think about like uncommon search terms that both show up on a page, and that's usually the easiest way that I've found to like remember things quickly so I can find them again.
Interesting. Wow. Your head is kind of like a Google, or a partial Google.
Well, like when you're Googling stuff, because like I like to dig deep on the internet when I'm looking into stuff, so a lot of that is just figuring out how to vary the search terms enough where it'll give you something different when you try to search for the thing again. Because I feel like a lot of the internet's functionally hidden if you're not like doing multiple searches. Depending, if you just need like the weather or something, you don't need to do that. But like if you like old topics,
you need to search for them 5 different ways at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, but.
Oh, I just mean 5 different ways in order to get the full story. So not just to find it, but to get the whole... Somebody says one thing about it here, and then somebody says a little bit more, and then there's the person that ties those two pieces together.
And then who owns which thing, what's the history of, like, the specific person writing said thing. Yeah, the internet, like, has made that into a very fun time-wasting game.
So speaking of wasting time on the internet, well, this wasn't wasting time. This was a very, very productive. So William Shatner is still alive, which is good. So I referenced him in the tweet.
88 years old.
Yeah, that's easy to check.
Or 87 or 88.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah, I saw it on Wikipedia a couple weeks ago, so that's why it said 87, but he may have turned 88 by now.
But I was glad that William Shatner, I am glad that William Shatner is alive and kicking. But I also think that Shatner is really mean in a lot of his posts. So really kind of hate read him. Hate read his stuff. So I really wanted to see it, and it was, it's William Shatner, it's Captain Kirk, and on the other hand, it's like, oh God, I can't believe he said that. Oh my God. So
he he's weird because he only is that character. Like, you don't ever get the sense that there is actually a private Shatner.
There were other roles that Captain Kirk played, like T.J. Hooker. Or the lawyer opposite James Spader.
On Boston Legal.
On Boston Legal, yeah. But it was really all Captain Kirk in different roles. Oh, maybe it was all from the guy in the episode of The Twilight Zone. He was actually he's the one that pervaded, and he played Captain Kirk and T.J. Hooker.
Well, Shatner's just he's a paradox, right? Because he's famous for being an actor, but he's famous for being an actor because he is entirely unable to stop being himself or portraying anything besides this, like, outsized public version of himself.
Okay.
And
with different lines.
Yeah, with different lines, and he always, like, brings you out of the material because he is the ultimate postmodern object, right? There is no character. The second William Shatner is there, you were thinking about it as this is a product of this period, this time. All the artificiality of the rest of what makes big commercial episodic television comes right out. And, like, Boston Legal, I think, really used that to their advantage, right? Because they got two guys like this. Because, like, James Spader gives off that Shatner vibe of, like, I am talking oddly.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
compelling, but I am talking oddly, and like you have the show around it is so stupid, right? It's like one of those David E. Kelly legal dramas. It's just a lot of people kind of acting awfully so that they could say like quippy things. They're all super rich, but they have like the kind of problems that people like to escape into. You know, they're having an affair with a gorgeous woman on the side or something, or you know, they might not get $2 million for some job or something. But the second you put James Spader and William Shatner into that scenario, it functions simultaneously as Thing itself and parody of Thing itself at once. And that just, like, it intrigues me, you know. And I feel like with Star Trek, it's not quite so much that, because he's not established as that guy. He's just like a captain who speaks very oddly. Like, it doesn't really bring me out of Star Trek until like the later Star Trek movies.
Well, so even now, going back and watching the original series, now that you have, this is what you think of as William Shatner, and it's always William Shatner. You don't see that going back.
Well, when I'm watching Star Trek, I think he's a lot more toned down on Star Trek. He also, like, he plays it up as he gets older, I think. He really likes being considered this oddball, kind of prima donna character.
Yeah, I could see him. It's not just that people are paying attention to him. It's that people like that about him.
Well, he's so distinctive because, like, everything in our era aesthetically is about having all these layers, and he is just a flat surface, right? Like, there's not like 5 or 6 William Shatners. There's just this one William Shatner, and ironically, the fact that there is only this one Shatner doesn't make it feel any more unique, or not unique, any more realistic or authentic for the fact that there's only one of them.
Okay.
Right, because there's like no real difference between the acting Shatner, the singing, air quotes, singing Shatner, and, like, you know, award show presenter Shatner.
Okay,
convention or Twitter Shatner. You know, he's just kind of like this vain prick kind of guy who slides by on the fact that everyone is, you know, he doesn't really make any claims to not be as such. Everyone kind of knows what they're getting into. Yeah.
And some people love him precisely for what he says, and some people like me hates that about him. But because of all those other aspects, I continue to read what he says. I would continue to read it now if he hadn't blocked me.
We should, for a future episode, we should watch a couple episodes of that failed Shit My Dad Says.
Oh, yeah,
sitcom he was on, because that seems like the
based on a Twitter
role.
Account, right?
Yeah, based on a Twitter fictional version of a Twitter account as a sitcom.
So yeah, anyways, you know, I hate read his stuff. So his Twitter account, you know, I'd still follow him, but he was no substitute for Carrie Fisher and Leonard Nimoy. They were very positive, or they tend to be positive, and they had really nice personal interactions with folks on Twitter. It was much more personal. It was much more personable. They were just much nicer. So in that tweet, you know, the way I said it about him, what I said was, for now, I'm still following William Shatner, which wasn't meant completely as disrespect, or that I wanted him to be dead or anything like that. It was me being glad that he's alive, hence the for now, but also I guess that's who I'm stuck with if I'm, you know, on Twitter here. So he got my tweet because I did @. You know, it's Twitter. You're talking about somebody and they have a Twitter account, you always put in their Twitter handle. So that actually called, you know, attention to, I guess, he or, you know, somebody that works for him looks at every mention of William Shatner. And
I feel like the actual William Shatner probably looks at every... That seems like such a William Shatner thing to do.
Yeah, that's true.
He gets his coffee in the morning and then looks through his Twitter mentions for 30 minutes.
I see somebody finds them, prints them all out for him so he can sit at the coffee table and read everyone. Mark them up. Think of, okay, I'm going to block the... Okay, he has about 50 pages. 25 of them he puts in the block them pile. And then the other 25, it's how am I going to respond? And of those 25, 15, he's going to say SJW. Which he does all the time. Anyways, he picked up my tweet, he forwarded it, and he forwarded it with a comment, "Get a jump on things, idiot," and then a goodbye wavy hand. And then he blocked me, which meant that I couldn't actually...
Wait, but you got tweeted at first.
I got tweeted at, but then he blocked me.
That's pretty good.
Well, that he gave a response.
You got a response on Twitter from William Shatner. That's pretty... And you got blocked. So that means, like, William Shatner actually spent part of his day thinking about you, specifically.
Yeah, and he's actually talking to me, not, oh, this person is an idiot, I'm going to block him. He said, it was effectively saying, hey, Ron, you should get a jump on things. Ron, you idiot. Bye, Ron. I never thought of that.
Yeah, you had, like, that's the point of Twitter, is to have the interaction, right? Because you never actually think, like, I'm going to be friends with this celebrity. You want a story out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so in a weird way, they provide that for you by the anthropology of Twitter blocking. Somebody needs to do some research on that, because I feel like that's...
There's a whole research paper out of William Shatner blocking people.
Right.
You know, I think the problem was that what I should have said, because I just read what I said, what I really should have said was, for now, I'm still following William Shatner because he was the best part of the Princess Diaries. But I didn't. That was my mistake. So he blocked me, so I couldn't tell at first. I didn't see his response. And but suddenly I started getting my name mentioned in a bunch of tweets. So he's got 20 million followers. Actually, 2 million followers, and it's now 2.5 million. And some of them are very devoted. I dare say, and a few of them are rabid. And I got to meet them. So over the next few days, a bunch of his followers, they started responding to his tweets, referencing me so that I'd see the responses, even though I couldn't see the original tweet. And two, some of them tweeted directly at me. And there was a lot of disagreement directed at me. How's that? These people weren't happy with me. Some of the stuff that was said was kind of, I would say, fairly even, just telling me that I was being a jerk or that was really rude. Just tell me, but they're saying it in a nice way, calling me out. Some of it was really vitriolic, saying I was really cruel about Fisher and Nimoy, so not just about William Shatner, but that I was cruel about them. And but mostly they were upset about me including him. But I even got a death threat. One of them was wishing me dead. At least one of them. I just remember one. And I
death threats are always fun.
Yeah, I responded to that one, and I just checked. You can see my response, but the original tweet is gone. So I don't know if the person deleted the tweet or
they got kicked off Twitter for threatening death.
Yeah. I mean, and it was legit. I mean, I knew this person wasn't going to come after me. I didn't imagine anybody doing that. But yeah, somebody was wishing me dead. So I actually responded to most of these, if not all of these tweets. And some of them was kind of laughing, and I was saying, some of the things they said were really absurd, and I would kind of laugh at it. Some of them I actually had a short conversation with, and, tended to be the people who were more even-handed. Or I would respond to some of the kind of cruel ones in a way that just sort of like deflated the balloon, I guess. But no, I had a few actually pleasant short conversations. And people actually listened to me when I explained myself, and they'd say, oh, okay, well, you should reword things better next time. Say, yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I agree. There were better ways of saying that. But those were pretty uncommon. Those were rare. Most of them were pretty vitriolic. And in fact, there was one person who couldn't stop telling me that I was a terrible person, and she said it in so many ways, and I'd respond to her, and then she'd respond again and telling me how terrible I was and that I don't get it, and here's the tweet. I feel like I'm trying to explain human interaction to a robot. How is it possible you're so bad at this? This is why I said I was done. So she said she was done, but she wasn't.
That's almost a full 140 characters, right? That's wordy for Twitter.
Right, that was in the days of 140, not 280. So my response was, you figured it out, which means I failed the Turing test, so I guess we're done. And then I did my wave goodbye, the same emoji that Shatner had used on me. There's another one there where I think I say something like beep, boop, beep, beep, boop. But anyways, and she not only, some of them were the responses, and some of them were actually direct tweets at me. She just couldn't stop. And I was responding to everyone and everything. So I guess I couldn't stop in the same way, but hey, for several days, it was fun. And and I realized, I should have said that better. I didn't disagree with my sentiment, because I find it really creepy, like I said, to have dead people in my Twitter feed and Facebook, even if I really like. So,
it's like Black Mirror stuff, like literally. I think there's at least 3 Black Mirror episodes about
dead people on
basically dead people on your Twitter feed.
Oh yeah, there was this one where they kind of build the woman's husband died.
Yeah.
By taking all the social media stuff and photos and whatever else. Yeah, you're right. So anyways, in the middle of all this, I updated my profile pictures. And it's a picture of my favorite costume. It's me in a Captain Kirk costume, complete with my attempt to replicate his sitting pose. It's kind of do that cross-legged thing when he's sitting and a little leaning a little bit. I love that picture. I love that costume. I loved it so much that I wore it for a number of years at my company's Halloween party, and I actually got laughed at. It's Ron in a Kirk costume. Who would have imagined? So in response, one year I wore a Mr. Spock costume, but that wasn't nearly as fun. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as fun as the Kirk outfit.
Too logical.
Although I can do the
I'm like, I can attest that's, and with the red shirt too, it's like a good effect. Yeah,
I am wearing a red shirt. So, and
somehow
in fact,
you made it to 2 episodes.
I was out sick for a while from work, and when I came back, a friend of mine gave me a Captain Kirk action figure, and that Captain Kirk action figure sits on top of a bookcase in my apartment, and it's a small apartment, so it's looking out all over, and when you walk into my apartment, it's facing you. So that's how much I appreciate and like Captain Kirk and Star Trek. Sorry, I hope I don't sound too, not indefensible, defenseless, defending, what's what I'm trying to think of. I don't know, I'm trying to say, I didn't do anything wrong, I promise. Like, no, I should have handled that better, but...
Oh, defensive.
I hope I don't...
across overly defensive.
Yeah, I hope I don't come across as overly defensive, but my point is, like, no, you guys don't understand, you don't know, you actually don't know my feelings about these characters. My feelings about them. Oh, they're so special.
This is the voyage.
This
is the voyage of Ron's 5-year journey
to complete this podcast episode. So, anyways,
I love that they say 5-year journey at the beginning of every episode, even though it got canceled after 3 years.
Right. Well, in the movies, these are the continuing voyage of the Star Trek Enterprise.
Because they learned their lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's where no person has gone before instead of no man. So, Super Friends.
That would be hilarious if they had like a version of Star Trek for like Spike TV where it's actually just like places where only women go.
Wait, I'm confused.
Call the show like Where No Man Has Gone Before. They're in this. They like have to get into a spaceship to like see a hair salon or something. It's like no man has set foot in here. It's just all their wives or it's like ladies in the town.
It's a planet of all men, and they go on their spaceship exploring, and they find a planet that is all women. I don't know where I'm going with this.
I think that was an actual episode of Sliders, the old sci-fi TV on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Uh-huh.
What was it? Sliders. I mean,
with McConnell. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because there's like, I can't remember if it's one of those ones where it's everyone on the planet is a woman, so they have a man as a sex slave, or like the opposite. But they definitely did that plot. On a related note, I have always been incredibly disappointed that show was not actually about hamburgers. And now I have made my peace in public. I can move on from my disappointment.
I just checked. So Sliders, I was looking for. It was Jerry O'Connell who I was thinking of, who was the star. It was created by Robert K. Weiss. Well, Robert K. Weiss and Tracy Torme, but Robert Weiss. That's what do you call it? The Day the Earth Stood Still. Unless, no, that's a different person.
He was involved in. No, okay, he acted in UHF. Do you ever see UHF?
I have. I actually saw it a few months ago.
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
I didn't love it as much. But I love those. Well, so
I haven't seen it since I was like 13, which I think is the perfect age
Kentucky Fried Movie.
That movie. Oh, yeah, Kentucky, right, the pre-airplane movie.
So I watched that, I don't know how many times when I was, say, 13, and I watched it again also a few months ago, and I didn't think it was as funny. I think also it's problematic in many ways.
The Zucker brothers, they've gone hard right.
Both of them?
Yeah. Okay. The last couple movies they've made. Like, I don't really feel like Airplane stood up that well when I watched it a couple years ago.
Oh, I just watched it again like a week or two ago.
Oh, what'd you think?
Oh, I liked it. I thought it held up well, yeah. Some of it was the familiarity with the jokes, I think, and seeing them again in context, if you want to call it that. I mean, the jokes are so disparate and sometimes separate from what's going on in the movie. But yeah, I liked it. Well, and I watched Airplane 2, or...
I've never seen Airplane 2.
Oh, Airplane 2, the sequel. They repeat half the jokes. That's one of the jokes. And William Shatner is in it.
Oh,
William
okay.
Shatner is in Airplane 2, the sequel.
I guess I watched the wrong Airplane movie.
Yeah. He's actually really good in it. He's hilarious. Out of all of it and all the funny stuff that goes on there, I actually this time thought that he was the funniest part. And it was the funniest because there's this really long, what do you call it? A single shot when the camera follows.
Oh, a tracking shot.
A tracking shot, and it's all one tracking shot, no cuts, and he's just going nonstop like that and talking, and he's looking, and he suddenly he's focusing on something else and saying something tangential, and then he turns back and talks to the person that he was talking to before, and then goes off and comes back, and he says a lot nonstop, and and it's all lines that he's been fed. But yeah, it's like 2-3 minutes of that, just like that. So he was good at comedy, at least that little bit. So Super Friends.
Yeah. So we've good lord. So this episode of Super Friends, it was from earlier on in the run. I think the animation, honestly, the character drawing was not as strong. It looked kind of amateurish in places. But overall, the animation quality was a lot better, or at least they had like more money to have stuff move and the pictures change, I think, than in the quote-unquote lost episodes that we've been watching. I really like this. It didn't make any kind of disingenuous stabs at trying to make sense. The parts of it where it did sort of try to be logical were fun.
They were fun and they were reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, like they were silly, but they
silly
and
clever
like,
at the same time.
Yeah, they weren't like insulting. Yeah. And so I guess the plot, we should go over the plot. There's
Gorilla Grodd. Well, the entire Legion of Doom. They're
they get a time portal thing somehow that never really gets explained, and they try to trap all of the Super Friends at various points very far in the past. Aquaman and Apache Chief get trapped in
70 million BC.
Yep.
Batman and Robin get trapped in near King Arthur's court.
Oh, I thought they got trapped in ancient Rome.
Oh, the ancient Rome? Then who was King Arthur's court?
It's Green Lantern, because he gets into that.
Right.
Because him and Sinestro decide, because they're in the Middle Ages, they have to create
ring-based
horses and have a joust, because that's the most logical form of combat between two guys who have rings that can create literally anything.
Well, actually, and what's going on is the Legion of Doom are trying to steal the historical artifacts and things that are the most priceless things in the world.
Well, I like how they decide to go back to California Alaska, I think it was, before the gold rush, but then they still have to dig up every single gold mine there. And I mean, I guess it's probably easier when you have super strength, superpowers, what have you.
But somebody's going to have to put all that gold back to be found the next day.
Right. And yeah, they just like really want all of history's gold.
Gold, they steal a statue from Rome. Diamonds. They steal South African diamonds before South Africa exists. That's what the 70 million BC was.
Right.
Before anyone has discovered those diamonds. So actually, this is going to have a lot of a major effect on history, because the gold rush will never have happened. South African diamond mines, that there never would have been a diamond industry. I forget what the King Arthur stuff that they took was. But the way that
it almost makes you think it could have gone in a very thoughtful direction in a weird way, right? Because if you had the supervillain, I'm trying to think, the model I'm thinking of here is the last 35 issues of Firestorm, the Nuclear Man.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever read any Firestorm?
I remember watching when he joined the Super Friends.
Yeah, he was in the Super Friends for 1 or 2 seasons, I think.
And that's the first time I'd heard of him. And then I was surprised to find out that he was actually in the comic books.
Yeah, he had his own series for 100 issues. The first 60 issues or so are kind of a ripoff of Spider-Man. I mean, it has a couple interesting, the idea of an old man and a young man being terminally joined together mentally in order to activate the power. That was kind of interesting, and they explored that not very well.
Uh-huh.
The last couple issues, actually written by the guy who wrote, no, he didn't write Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was Marv Wolfman. But he wrote most of the other DC crossover books like Legends when that came out.
Okay,
and,
I remember that.
Anyway, where was I going? Yeah, so like think the supervillains, they go back in time, they try to get all the gold to solve humanity's problems by stopping capitalism from ever happening for wealth accumulation, right? And then you got, like, I would watch that Super Friends episode.
Like if you knew what you're going into. Because we didn't know. All we knew was that the Legion of Doom was going to be in it.
Yeah, like there's a way to do that in a highbrow, why am I saying highbrow? Like it was a martini or something. Like, I think that's one of the things I love about old superhero stuff is that by being so crazy and unconcerned with internal coherence, you get all these sort of striking images and not a lot holding you back from just taking them out of context and pondering them as just sort of these surrealist short episodes of here's a gorilla talking like Orson Welles ordering a bunch of guys around in a swamp.
Who, by the way, is the one that invented the little mini time machine.
Right, who invented like a time door.
Yeah.
The time trap, I guess, is what
Time trap. That was the name of the episode. So the Legion of Doom ends up trapping a bunch of the Super Friends back in all these different times. How are they going to get out of this? Well, Aquaman figures out, I'll use the transponder that they use, like the emergency transponder.
Yeah, and they use like the kind of batteries they should have used for the Sega Dreamcast clock battery so that I wouldn't have to fucking open that thing all the time. Yeah, it's like some kind of battery that's going to last more than 70 million years. It's basically just radioactive waste that he's carrying around in his pocket, it sounds like.
Yeah, it refers to it as nuclear powered.
And he buries it in the ground under where the Hall of Justice would be, which they got really lucky because you think like you still have Pangea at 70 million BC, right? Uh-huh. There was probably a better than 50% chance that the spot where the Hall of Justice would eventually be, A, there's no tectonic shifts that destroy this fairly flimsy looking communicator. B, the place where they initially have to dig isn't like several. Well, I guess they have Aquaman there, so like if it had to go like way, way deep below the ocean where technically the pressure would like break your head or something.
Uh-huh. He just sends one of the fish to go down. It can have a whole, not assembly line, passing the water bucket. So he said, this fish, pass it on to this fish. That fish goes down until it can't go any further. Pass it to the next fish that goes down. So on until they get to the point where, and this is where it should be. And there's some fish all the way at the bottom or some aquatic creature that can dig.
Right, and there's like also no technical failure whatsoever from a radio presumably made at some point in the mid-1970s, which I can tell you from personal experience, like unless the rest of the Super Friends were in 69 million whatever BC, like 15 to 20 years in the future, Aquaman probably should have been SOL.
Well, and in fact, he says specifically, so we're going to send the transponder to set out the alarm 70 billion plus 1978 years plus 252 days. So he knows exactly
on the mark. They have a very confident theory of when Christ was born and lived.
Well, apparently Gorilla Grodd, like when he sent them back, he did 70 million years exactly on the nose. Which, by the way, so 252 days, that's August. So August of 1978, August and some days. That's when the events of the episode happened. So there must have been around when the episode was aired. They would have tried to tie the two together, right? The solution, so this way Aquaman lets the Justice League know when they can find Aquaman and Apache Chief. Superman says, oh, well, you know what? I can travel so fast that I can go back in time and get them. And he does. We then see suddenly all of the Super Friends back in one place. And we don't see others being saved. Or maybe we see one more being saved. But then there's a few others that we never see Superman go and get them. Because at this point it just, well, we know what the solution is. We've only got a limited amount of time, so let's not show that part. I forget what else we see or don't see.
Well, I just had another idea for a better alternate version of this episode for like a Vertigo-style comic book.
Okay.
Going off of the previous discussion, you have one of the supervillains goes back in time, kidnaps Jesus Christ, forces him into like the 0 AD equivalent of the witness protection program for a couple years.
Okay.
And he just lets the heat blow off. And then
33 AD.
Oh, 33 AD,
Yeah.
Which is funny because, like, after death, but it starts when he's born. So he's like Notorious B.I.G. He's like born to die.
Well, let's see. So
Ready to die.
Oh, and actually, there's no zero.
Notorious B.I.G. record.
What was that?
Oh, no, they're just mumbling about Notorious B.I.G.
Oh, that's Born to Die is.
Or Ready to Die is
Ready
the first Notorious B.I.G. album, I think.
Well, we're all constantly dying. I
Yeah.
guess that makes sense. We're not all prepared for it. It's just that we're constantly in a state of careening towards death.
But yeah, if there's like no Christ story, then, you know, how do the world's major religions develop? Presuming that, you know, I guess we have 5 accounts of it, which is pretty good for something that happened that long ago in terms of historically verifying at least something happened.
Right, we know something happened. We know there's some real people. We just don't know exactly what happened. We have different versions.
So maybe the supervillains going back in time and kidnapping Christ really wouldn't have much historical impact.
Wait, why not?
Well, because, like, think about it, the first written documents in the New Testament, the oldest you can trace back a written copy is around, like, 200 AD.
Right.
So there's, like, a huge amount of time between when people were passing these stories around orally and when they were written down.
Uh-huh.
Presumably that story shifted, changed, you know, like we've all played telephone before.
Yeah, yeah.
200 years is, if I forget to write something down within 2 days, usually I forget most of it. You know, if it's like something important. No, if it's like catalogs and stuff, I remember it forever because that's the most useful way to allocate those resources in my head. But yeah, that's my idea.
I don't know why this reminded me all of this, or this just kind of came out of the blue. We mentioned Carrie Fisher earlier, well, a number of times, but you said how she said that she was so coked out of her head that she didn't remember filming the
Star Wars Holiday Special. Yeah,
thank you, that one. She also talks about mental illness because she was bipolar, and I forget if there was anything else. So she was she had some major drug addiction, including alcoholism, but also mental illness, and she was very open about this and would advocate for people with mental illness, and she even had a one-woman show in which she talks about that, and it's in her books. But she talks about her being treated with ECT, shock treatment,
mm-hmm.
and she said that's actually it wiped out a huge part of her memory, and so she can't remember not just that, but a whole lot of stuff because of the combination of drugs and ECT.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered that I wanted to finish up that thought earlier because we haven't said or talked about enough. Anyway, so Super Friends. Oh, Superman goes back in time.
They just find this like thing under the Hall of Justice, immediately figure out we need to dust off and then carbon test the dirt surrounding Aquaman, 70 million year old, but somehow not damaged at all, danger communicator, whatever. And then as soon as they figure out how old the dirt is, they immediately presume that all of them are stuck back in history. We find out that the Super Friends, basically everybody in this universe has access to like very easy, intuitive time travel technology, but somehow that has not made anything within their universe look anything less like the United States in the 1970s.
But the solution, Superman flying so fast that he goes back in time, this came out in 1978, and the movie Superman, the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, it came out in December of 1978, and this came out possibly August of 1978 or sometime then, so right beforehand. So we had these two things going on right near each other. So two versions of Superman. I mean, Super Friends are definitely not canon. I don't know where the movies...
I don't think the movies are canon.
But you had these...
Well, I guess it depends on what canon you're talking, because like half the comic books aren't canon, and they have like every 10 years they have an event to like make some of the other comic books not canon so they don't drown in continuity.
Uh-huh.
Like Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? It's like saying all of that is no longer canon.
All of
every DC comic before like 1987.
Right. Because there was stuff like there was only one Flash, and it was the Golden Age Flash, the Silver Age Flash, or whatever that era was called. Of course, was dead, so that didn't matter. There is only one Superman, so that sort of...
But they still rebooted his origin. He can't
when Man of Steel.
Yeah, Man of Steel, the Man of Steel miniseries, the John Byrne thing.
Right, which is already a little different than the story that would have come out of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
And oh man, those Kryptonians look so odd.
Byrne has a really cartoony way of drawing faces, which is weird because a lot of his others, like the bodies and everything, look very realistic. So I feel like his faces tend to always look like kind of happier or more whimsical than you would expect them to, given what they're
given what's really going on and what they're
like
saying,
in those old X-Men comics, like there's some pretty heavy shit that goes down. He has one face that he draws for people being concerned, but he has a lot more faces for people kind of being playful, whimsical, as I said before.
Okay.
So on.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff going down, and everybody's just they're smiling or laughing. Maybe a little concerned, and then happy.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not being fair because there's like the Dark Phoenix saga. There's a famous cover with like Cyclops holding the dead Marvel girl.
Okay.
On the spaceship. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
No, I haven't. I did see Dark Phoenix.
Oh, was it? Wait, what was that? Is that a feature movie?
Yeah. It's an X-Men movie that came out a few months ago about Jean Grey. The Dark Phoenix story. But anyways, my point was that they used the same solution right around just a few months apart. Although neither of them being canonical. I don't know why that matters.
I think it was in the comics first, but that would be an errata thing. It sounds like a Golden Age Superman story.
Oh, okay.
Because Golden Age Superman stories would be like he'd get a weird different power every week, and then they had 8 different kinds of kryptonite, and
red kryptonite.
He almost takes on this Noah-like context because all these animals, seemingly like one of each kind of animal that was on Krypton, followed him in his little spaceship to the Earth.
Oh, right.
They all
we talked about that.
reassemble as the super pets.
Yeah, we talked about Crypto the super dog. There must have been a super cat, right?
Oh, yeah, super cat, super horse, super monkey, super... It's basically like a stable worth of...
Wow. That's a lot of animals.
Yeah, and then there's like his cousin.
Well, yeah, Supergirl.
Like there's enough Krypton floating around, or kryptonite, I mean. But kryptonite is just like a piece of
Krypton that ends up in places really, really far away from, where chunks of a planet that blew up.
Right, if you're a DC supervillain, you like put that on display in your secret headquarters, like corporate places will put up like a piece of the Berlin Wall and like a little glass case, like they got one of those at the Microsoft headquarters.
A piece of the Berlin Wall?
Yeah.
Actually, a friend of mine has one.
Oh, nice.
A little tiny piece. Because you could just go to Germany, you go to Berlin, and then they sell it. Actually, a friend of mine who lived in Berlin, she lived in West Berlin, and when the wall was being taken down, I mean, everybody went out there and just chopped up little pieces. It wasn't like the whole wall came down at once. And the whole wall is really a bunch of walls. But yeah, she actually went and took some pieces herself. Yeah, I don't know. What else is there to say about this episode? The length made it better because they could get out a lot more of the story. The solution to the problem was, while a little bit silly, it was also logical and clever. The length allowed for all that, so yeah, overall.
And the animation, I think, was a lot more fun just because it was a lot less. It looked more primitive and less phoned in, right? Like it looked like somebody was having fun drawing this stuff.
Yeah. Even
if they couldn't necessarily, because like I could tell looking at it, all of those costumes, like all the character designs for that show, I would have to look it up, but I'm like 90% sure it was done by Alex Toth, who is one of the, like, in terms of just pure technical ability, one of the like 2 or 3 greatest draftsmen in U.S. commercial comic books, like ever. Like he's the guy who designed Space Ghost. He's the guy who designed like all those things, and he would do like stories. He didn't do many superhero comic. His stuff's scattered all over these little magazines and stuff. But yeah, you can tell like he handed in these character designs, and then wherever they sent the thing to get animated, it got pretty butchered. There's like some really bizarre anatomy in this series.
Was there a big comic, I would say, industry in Korea at the time? Because now a lot of the stuff like animation will get sent to
I think it's Korea, right?
Yeah, it's actually a lot of it gets sent to North Korea.
North Korea?
North Korea, yeah. There's a great graphic novel by this French guy who used to work in the animation industry called Pyongyang, and it's about him working as a foreign executive in this part of North Korea where they're doing all this contract animation and his interactions with the politics of North Korea.
So if I buy a comic book, there's the possibility that it was
this is
created?
TV animation.
Okay.
So
So if I
almost
want-
any TV animation you would have seen outside of, say, South Park that was made in the last 45 years was probably farmed out to either somewhere in South Korea or somewhere in North Korea. And there's different sub studios in those countries. It's not like you're contracting directly with the governments. Some of them are a lot better than others. You can tell, Batman the Animated Series, the 90s one, you can actually tell which studio did the final animation. So some of them, if you're looking really carefully, there's issues. There's not issues anywhere near the level of the Super Friends episode we just watched, or the 90s X-Men cartoon. The last 6 episodes of that were sent to a completely different animation studio. They look entirely different than all the rest of the series.
Oh, wow, North Korea.
Yeah. Guide to Lille, Pyongyang. It's a quick read, and it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. Wow, I'm blown away by that. Anything else?
We were talking about a couple Bruce Conner short films, but mostly about the Super Friends, and mostly actually about William Shatner.
Yeah. I think that's really the linchpin of this 2-part episode.
So see you next week, everybody.
All right, see ya. Take care.